Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Lieutenant Stephen Rogers here on the East Coast of the United States of America. Tonight we have a very special guest whom I will introduce to you in a moment. But I have a very clear and unmistakable message to Justin Trudeau and the government that he has formed in Canada. And for the sake of all our Americans, friends and neighbors and colleagues watching, you need to know that Justin Trudeau is transforming a free Canada into a Canada that has embraced the ideology of Marx, Lenin, and Stalin. I've said all along for quite a while that, yes, we indeed have threats south of our border. It's something we're keeping an eye on. It's something that is obsessing us in this country, rightfully so. But what we have neglected is the threat north of us. And believe it or not, that threat is in Canada, and it's not the Canadian people. In fact, it's the Canadian people who have been holding the line, as far as I'm concerned, with regard to the security of the United States of America. Because Justin Trudeau and his government have indeed embraced a communist ideology that is growing day by day. But the message that I have and many in this country have for Justin Trudeau is that your days are numbered. Everyone who takes the course of a dictator, of a tyrant, they end up in that ash bin of history, as Ronald Reagan once made very clear to the Soviets. But every day, every week, every month, in fact, every hour, we're going to be getting information out to people not only here in America and across Canada, but around the world. Since we've been broadcasting with regard to what we're going to do to help the Canadian people, we here at Campaign for America have received thousands of emails from people all over the world. The list of countries is staggering. But these are people who believe in freedom and liberty and who believe that what we need to do is to come together. More so than ever, prayerfully, we must never forget that there is a God above, and we pray to him for guidance, wisdom, and understanding, and the direction in which we should go. And the direction we're going in tonight, this evening, is I'm going to speak to a pastor who, in my estimation, is and I know he's a modest guy, and he probably don't want to hear this, but I've got news for you, folks. You're going to hear from a hero tonight, a man who has stood up for the principles not only written in the Holy Bible, not only has he stood up and heeded the call that God gave him, but he has also stood up for what is right and what is just and what is free, and for the individual liberties of every single person who lives in his country, Canada, but a shining example of what it means to be a person standing up for what's right and just around the world. Now, I'm going to play a very, very quick video for you. It's going to be very quick, maybe 10 seconds, okay? You're probably not going to hear much, but I want you to see, and I'm playing the video more so for the Americans, for my countrymen, because when I explained to them that police actually went into a church during a church service to confront a pastor of a church, they just find it appalling. They find it absolutely hard to believe. Because in this country, I can tell you, they do a lot of crazy things in this country, but that is one thing. The sanctity of a church, the sacredness of a church. Police that use their heads, if they wanted to talk to the pastor, would wait for him to go home or well after the service. So here's just a quick video of a Fox interview that the pastor had. We're only going to show the part of the police in the church, and then we're going to get right to the pastor.
Please get out. Get out of this property. Immediately get out.
Now, these are the officers. I know you can't hear the pastor, but he's telling them to get out of the church.
I don't want to hear any out of this property.
1, 2, 3. It looks like you got almost a dozen officers there.
Out of this property. Immediately until you come back with a warrant. He called them nuts.
So the pastor has these officers, if you want to call them that. I've been a police officer for 38 years, and these individuals, although they're doing their job, they're police supervisors, chief, or whatever, they're a disgrace. I mean, they tarnished the badge of law enforcement worldwide. But the pastor they were looking for, his name is Pastor Arthur Pawlowski. And I've got to tell you, folks, he lives in the province of Alberta. He immigrated from Poland, and we're going to talk to you about what he was doing in Poland at the time he lived there. he is just a terrific guy who actually believes in what he says, and he's going to defend, I believe, to his last breath when you hear his background. So, Pastor, I tell you, it's an honor for me to have you on this broadcast. Americans have heard about you. This is the first time many of them are going to see you, and unlike the mainstream media, you take all the time you want because we got a lot of time here, and I want your story to get out. Pastor, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me in. Wow. It's a great honor to hear from a law enforcement agent that actually understands and have been living to serve and protect, because that idea in my beloved Canada is completely lost. For me, this is a repetition of history, as you can tell very quickly by my accent. Like I always say to the people, you don't have to believe me, believe my accent. I know what I'm talking about. I grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. I've seen the officers, or so-called officers, I call them now gangsters. They're like muscle for the biggest mafia that we have seen, government mafia. I've seen the abuse of power. I've seen that they were doing in the name of the law. Believe it or not, they would come and torture people, just like they have been torturing me for 50 days in prison. They will arrest you, they will beat you up, they will sentence you to years in jail. All of that for your own benefit, believe it or not. So I have seen this before, and I'm simply warning everyone and anyone that is willing to listen. I've seen this movie before. If we will not change the script, we're going to suffer.
Now, you had shared with me earlier that you were in Poland and that you were actually there when Lech Walesa started Solidarity.
That's right. Not only that, my wife was smuggling pamphlets for the Solidarity movement. And I don't know if you know, but I started Solidarity movement. Can you see it?
Ah, look at this. Look at this.
I started that in Canada because I truly believe that we are in solidarity, or at least we should be in solidarity with each other. We're being told by the corrupted, evil, wicked, wannabe tyrants, the mafia of today, the so-called politicians, that we are in this together, while they are giving themselves a raise, while they are not suffering, and not even a penny. Actually, they're giving themselves bonuses left and right, while the rest of the country, your country, my country, the common folk are suffering. And that's communism, my friends. If you have been paying attention what's happening in Shanghai, if you have been seeing people yelling, screaming, and the animals being thrown out, and the people not being able to get food, well, that's, my friends, communism. That's socialism. That's exactly what I have witnessed when I was growing up. So my wife was smuggling pamphlets for the Solidarity movement, and I received a book from Lech Wałęsa for my contribution to Christianity. Every year I would go back to my old country, to Poland, and I would organize Christian festivals and all kinds of events. And one of those cities was Gdańsk. And if you remember, that's exactly where the revolution, a peaceful revolution, started in 1980. So I lived through it. I've seen it. I've seen the tanks. I've seen the soldiers, martial law, people being beaten, arrested, smoke, guns being fired, and tens of thousands of people being arrested. And why? Because they dared to tell the government, wait a second, you're not our masters. We're not your slaves. And people quite often are telling me, what can we do? There's nothing we can do. Listen to the story of the guy that grew up behind the Iron Curtain under the boots of the Soviets. The moment the Polish people realized a very simple fact, wait a second, there is more of us than of them, it was over for the tyrants. The moment they took it to the streets peacefully, they didn't need it to shoot the police. They didn't need to take the swords and chop people's heads off. No. Everything was done Mahatma Gandhi style, Martin Luther King Jr. civil rights movement style. They took it to the streets and they simply refused to work for the tyrants. They said, no more. We're not going to participate in this craziness. We're not your slaves. There's more of us than of you, and we refuse to cooperate. The moment the people did that, yes, the government, the totalitarian government, cracked hard on them, but it was over. It was just a matter of time. The moment they outlawed Solidarity movement in Poland, within the first year, it grew from 1 million members to 3 million members. And then soon, very quickly, a few years later, it had over 10 million members. And in 1989, as you remember from history, I'm sure you have been watching that when everything was unfolded. 1989 Poland, for the first time after the Second War, when Poland was taken over by the Soviets, Polish people had free and democratic election, and the Berlin Wall has fallen.
Yes, I want to address the police actions a minute, because as you're speaking, my blood is boiling over the way you were treated. I showed some of the videos to some of the most professional law enforcement officers in the world, especially from New York City. Now, I know, and we're not naive enough to believe that some of the cops in Canada are not watching this broadcast, that some of the politicians from your parliament are not watching. So now they're going to hear from me for a minute. Number one, you can't touch me. I'm across the border. So I could say what I want to say without fear of any retribution. But I've been a professional police officer for 38 years. It's a long time, long time. Been a commander of detective bureaus, investigation bureaus, etc. But I'm not going to talk about myself. I give you that experience I have because I know what I'm talking about. The police officers, I get it, on the street, you're obeying orders. It is what it is. But I want to address the commanders who sent them out on the street. Number one, what you reduced your police officers to are no better than the thugs on the streets of New York City, than the thugs on the street of Philadelphia, than the thugs on the street in Chicago and San Francisco and Los Angeles and on and on. What you reduced your police forces to are thugs, are punks, are people who do not deserve to wear the uniform or the badge that professional police officers wear worldwide. There is a time, there is a place, and there is a way you address problems that need to be addressed with regard to activity that is not in line with your thinking. The reason why I'm not using the word crimes or criminal activity is that this pastor and others that I saw in video have committed no crimes, other than the ones, of course, Trudeau made up. And that's what it all boils down to. So now you're hearing it from one cop, me, just one cop, all right? Not just a patrolman, retired as a detective lieutenant, one cop. You're going to hear from some more cops. And Pastor, what I've done is we're putting together some videos with some of the help of the people in Canada and here in the United States, and we're sending a letter to the International Associations of Chiefs of Police, and we're asking them to get involved, to engage, because in their mission statement is to uphold professional law enforcement worldwide. So I just want you to know that what we saw there in those videos here across the border, I've got to tell you, we're well aware of what we're going on. We're going to help you the best we could, believe me. And you're absolutely right in the way you identified what those cops did. It reminded me, I tell you, it reminded me of the old movies I used to see where Nazi stormtroopers went into churches and homes. I mean, that was so appalling to see the video of cops coming into that church. Now you were able to chase them out. Did they leave voluntarily, or did you have a problem with them staying?
Well, I had to tell them, someone counted over 30 times, get out. Finally, they go, but they came back. As you know, they came back with a crooked judge's order that gave them the power to enter the church, contrary to the Criminal Code of Canada, section 176, 1, 2, and 3. So in other words, they broke the criminal code, which is punishable by 2 years prison term. They came back with SWAT team. Believe it or not, they came back with they came back with a SWAT team. And me and my brother David, we were arrested in the middle of the highway on the way back home. When they entered the church was packed, hundreds of people. So they decided not to arrest me at the pulpit because, rightfully so, that probably would not go very well. They will have to arrest a lot more people. So they waited for the people to go home. And when I was driving back with my brother David and a friend of mine, we were arrested in the middle of the highway. It was a big, high-stake, dangerous arrest by SWAT team. and we were taken to the police jail. We spent 3 days and 2 nights on concrete until we were finally released on bail by the judge. They came back again and again and again, and every time I would kick them out. So eventually I was charged with contempt of court order, and I have been found guilty, as you know, and penalized over $50,000 worth of penalties, and also compelled speech. So this judge, his name is Adam Germain, and if you don't believe me, you can Google it up. I mean, this was a crazy story. He ordered me, my brother David, and another fella, Chris Scott, to give a speech every single time we address the media, every time I preached from the pulpit, every time I talk to another human being, I have to give a compelled speech straight from CNN and CBC. In other words, the judge, this crooked judge, Adam Germain, have ordered us to become part of the mainstream propaganda machinery. And me and my brother David, we just refused. The moment he ordered us to do this, we said, no, sir. We are still in Canada. This is North Korea. This is not China under Mao Zedong. This is not Soviet Russia. We refuse to obey this. And if you want to arrest us, so be it. But we will not give people this lie. What this judge wanted us to do, every time we would say, for example, I'm talking to you right now, before he ordered me, before I can talk to you, I have to tell you the masks do work, the vaccines are okay, and they save lives, and all this CNN garbage lie propaganda straight from Soviet Russia, straight from Pravda, a newspaper of a Communist Party, or from Goebbels, if you will, Minister of Propaganda from the Nazi era, and we couldn't do it. So I was expecting to be arrested sooner or later, and I went with my son Nathaniel to United States. I shared my story for 4 months in the United States, warning you, because you got to remember, Americans, they came for me today. Be sure of it. If you don't help me, if you don't help people like me, they're going to come back for you. It's just a matter of when, not if. So I shared my story. On the way back, I was arrested coming out of the plane on tarmac, believe it or not, criminally charged. I have a dozen charges right now: inciting people to come to church, officiating illegal gathering, participating in illegal gathering, which is the church service, not wearing a muzzle, disturbing peace, trespassing, you name it. They have thrown a breach of probation, all nonsense. I have been charged when I supported the Quds convoy. As you remember, the truck convoy, I was, of course, part of that. It was the most beautiful thing I've seen in a very long time in Canada. I was charged with terrorism because I gave a speech encouraging Canadians to stand up for their rights and do it peacefully. The Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, he on television, he said that Pawlowski was inciting people to commit acts of violence against other people, which is a made-up lie.
Pastor, what's his name?
He's the Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney. By the way, Jason Kenney broke the same law, in quote, of course, the same mandate that I was charged criminally, and later on I was found guilty under this crooked judge's, decision, Adam Germain. Jason Kenney, with his Minister of Environment, Jason Nixon, the Minister of Finance, Teeves, and the Minister, that's very important, of Health, Tyler Shandro, the same minister that sent the health inspectors like the Nazis, like the KGB agents to our church, the same man that shut down our businesses, destroyed our restaurants, the same man that was caught with the Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, red-handed, breaking the same rules and regulations, having a big party with whiskey and other people at the Sky Palace. Well, he comes on television and he says, well, I'm sorry, I apologize for that. And they moved on. No tickets, no arrests, no courts. And yet pastors, I'm not the only one. There's a number of us that have been arrested and prosecuted. I'm still facing, as we speak, dozen criminal charges for the same offense that Jason Kenney has been found has been found red-handed. So then later on, Chandra, the Minister of Health, he resigned from his position and he was awarded to be a Solicitor General and a Minister of Justice. The very man that was caught breaking his own rules and regulations was promoted, not demoted, promoted to a position that now sends the Crown prosecutors, judges, and the police to hunt down those that dare to expose his corruption.
Well, a couple of things you said. They are indeed. I got your law right here. They're obstructing or violence to or arrest of officiating clergymen. They violated the law.
Of course.
Me saying that, you know, there's a saying that we have in America with regards to some of the politicians you mentioned and the judge. They're political prostitutes. That's what they are. They'll sell their souls for any bit of little teeny weeny power that they can get. But the good news is this, Pastor. All my years in law enforcement, I could tell you, everybody gets caught and goes to prison. All these politicians that are committing these acts against the people, judges and cops, they go to prison. And another message to the street cops out there who are involved in this, know this, all right? Like me, when I was a patrolman on the street, you're the low guy and gal on the totem pole. Well, when it hits the fan, those people above you, they are going to blame you. They are going to go after you. Believe me, that's what's going to happen. So to protect yourself, ask for everything in writing, all right? If they don't give you it in writing, hold your diary and make sure you have everything because it will hit the fan. Clearly, I read some of the laws of your land there, and this particular case is a gross violation of the laws. I got them right here. False arrest, in my view, obstruction of justice. I mean, threats of violence, unlawful arrest, SWAT teams. I mean, you got to be kidding me. But to that judge, I got to tell you, Judge, if you're watching or any of your cronies are watching, if you ever came across the border and was brought before a judicial panel here, you would be immediately disbarred. I mean, you don't do this to people like that. Same thing with these police chiefs. So Pastor, my point is that I hear from a lot of Canadians and you know, they're depressed, they're upset, they feel helpless and hopeless, but they're not to be because help is there. Now, I'd like you to also please put up that website again. I have a question for you. So how you have an attorney, correct?
I have actually a number of them. I got two teams working together. The problem with this is that the judges are not obeying the law. They're not following their own laws. For example, today, right now, they just finished, a friends of mine, they would kick the Nazis out, those health inspectors out of their building because they wanted to break the Criminal Code of Canada, Section 176, and the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And that crooked judge right in Edmonton, she said that she's not going to allow Charter of Rights arguments. She said that I'm not going to allow you to defend yourself with your constitution because that's muddying the water. I mean, this is a total insanity. It's like going to United States and saying to the people, oh, you're not allowed to use your constitution. And you're...
Pastor, I'm going to say something right now, but I want to qualify this so that I'm not misinterpreted, all right? I want to make it very, very clear that what I'm about to say will not happen. But this is how revolutions in countries begin. This is how the violence begins. This is how there is a complete upheaval of a country. We saw it, as the good pastor said, in Poland. We saw it in the Soviet Union. Well, we saw it all over the world when these tyrants and these so-called lawmakers in a parliament or whatever get to push the people too far. This is what happens. This is what I'm sure the pastor and others want to prevent. That's why we say do things within the framework of the law. And I'll tell you something else. I don't want to be misinterpreted again, but I've heard from Americans all over this country. Thank God we have a Second Amendment. Believe me, thank God we have a Second Amendment. And we've warned, and when I say we, the American people have made it very clear that we never want to resort to anything where there's going to be an armed conflict in our country or even a type of revolution. But the problem is that you do see people get out of hand, right, Pastor? There are people who will do things we don't want them to do. And we have to be very, very clear on that the pastor's actions or any action of any citizen is always within the framework of the law. But when the lawmakers don't obey the law, that is what invites lawlessness. And that is what we all have to prevent. So they're going to, continue to do what they want to do until hopefully the people of Canada, through the elective process, just remove these people from office. Because, Pastor, an individual once said to me, sooner or later, they're going to go. They're going to die of old age. They're going to get a disease. They're all going to go. But it's the ashes they leave behind them on the streets of your country that have to be prevented. So now, are you under house arrest?
Yeah, I have. I was for 2 weeks, 24 hours a day. Now I am on 12 hours from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. I am not allowed to leave my house. I had to give up almost $50,000 for my bail. Also, I am not allowed to be in certain places and go to rallies or protests. I, believe it or not, I am not even allowed to go to my church to feed the poor. I am a pastor of 2 churches. One is in a building. I am allowed to go there, but I'm not allowed to feed the poor on the streets of Calgary. It's prohibited unless I get the special permit from the mayor, which is crazy. She is working for the world, the new world order for the globalists, climate, craziness. So it's total insanity. I don't even have a court date. I spent almost 2 months, 50 days. On the 51st day, I was released from prison, and the presumption of innocence was thrown out of the window. I was already suffering a prison term, a solitary confinement for over 30 days. I was placed in max spot for the most dangerous offenders. And then later I was transferred for a week to a psych ward without evaluation from the doctor. A doctor from AHS is Alberta Health Services, came to me when I was in a psych ward and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, that's a good question. I do not know. They took me from my cell and they placed me here." He says, you're not supposed to be here. You're not allowed to be here, because this place is when we determine that you have a psychological problem. And we have not done that. And we do not allow people to be in this place, because then they can be a disturbance to other inmates that have problems. And that was his reasoning. And he says, I have to check on this. And he did, and he said it came from the administration. In other words, they broke the law, they bypassed the regulations and the way it should be done, and they locked me for a week in psych ward to break me. In the middle of this craziness, they would not allow me to see my lawyer for over 3 weeks. My conversations with my lawyer, with my legal team, was monitored, recorded. And when I finally had a meeting with a lawyer, an officer was listening to every word we were saying. So there goes your privilege. There goes your confidential information totally. I wrote down certain things and my documents were confiscated, and they kept them for a week to make, I'm sure, copies of all the legal stuff that I was putting on the paper, because I could not see my lawyer. So that was the only way I could communicate certain things with my legal team. A total craziness. My telephone conversations were cut off. I had to many times use the ORCA number, the inmate's number, to call my lawyers or my family. So that's the law according to the tyrants. Jason Kenney, the Premier of Alberta, he is acting like his friends in Chinese totalitarian communism. He doesn't care about law and order. He doesn't care about the Charter of Rights and Freedoms.
He sounds like a street punk that I used to deal with on the streets. I hope he's watching. Pastor, they called you and others terrorists, but I've got to tell you, and I'm watching a news feed here with some of the American audience, it sounds like they're the terrorists. They have not only terrorized the people of Canada, but they are terrorizing us here in America. Now Americans are saying, wait a minute, we know what's going on the southern border, but we didn't know it was that bad on the northern border. And sooner or later, the politicians in this country, because now they're getting this information, they're going to wake up and they're going to realize we're going to put the brakes on something and we're going to help the Canadian people. Right now, as you know, we're dealing with a near communist regime in the White House. In fact, I don't even think the president of the United States knows who he is at this point. But we're dealing with that problem. But in November, and here's the encouragement that I want to share with you and the Canadian people. We're gonna have what we call a red tsunami. Red meaning the Republican Party. We're gonna destroy, literally, figuratively, or however anybody wants to interpret. We're gonna destroy the Democrat Party. It'll probably cease to exist because we're gonna take control of the Congress and then the White House in 2024. And on every level of government, believe me, right now they're being thrown out of office. Saying that, I believe with a new administration, you're going to see, at least with the Republican Party in control, a lot of attention towards our northern border. Because as time goes on, all this information is now getting out. Now, listen, I didn't know that it was going. I've read a lot of things, but hearing it now from you is chilling. I mean, it really is chilling. I mean, to think that we have a friend, an ally right across our border. We think of Canada as one of the most friendliest, kindest people on earth there. I mean, a real great free country, still a great free country. And we're going to do our best to make sure it stays great and free. But I can tell you with the parliament up there, and I've heard from some people that, you know, we've got connections all over the place. They're not very happy with Americans getting involved in what they say their internal affairs. The problem with that argument, Pastor, is they made it an external affair. Because
That's right.
when they are advocating communism on my border, all right, they're advocating a national security threat to the people of the United States. What next? What's going to happen next? Now, I understand, and this will be another topic down the road that I'm going to talk to other people about, that Chinese, and you don't have to weigh in on this if you don't want, but that Chinese troops, that Chinese military were on Canadian soil doing some training. Now, I asked around. I didn't believe it at first, but I got some pretty good information that this is factual. So what are we going to do in America? And this is for my American audience here. What are we going to do? Now, I want you to think about what's going on right now in Ukraine and why. What are we going to do if the Chinese and the Canadians get real cozy and the Chinese decide that they want a military base in Canada? What are we going to do? Think about that one. Think about that one, America, because that's where we're headed. And when I say that, Pastor, the Canadians are holding the line, I really mean that. You have within your sphere of influence, and Canadians all over Canada have awakened not only the American people to a clear and present danger on our border, but people worldwide to what could happen to a free country. But these clowns, and you know, I don't like to use words like that often on the air, but that's who these politicians are. Look, I was elected to office twice here, believe in term limits, and I left. So I get it all. The good Lord gave me all kinds of experiences. I know how they operate. I know how they think. And I know where they end up when they're corrupt and they're bad. So the encouraging part of this is through prayer and putting our faith to work, we do fine. Now, a couple more things before I let you go. I want to get back to the legal stuff. I want to get back to your finances. I really want to see what we can do to help you. Where's all this money coming from to help you?
Well, I got two legal teams that are defending me. I got a criminal lawyer and I got a civil lawyer as well. That is covered. Now I'm raising funds for another team of lawyers to go after the villains for what they have done to me in prison, keeping me in metal boxes, solitary confinement, threatening me all the time, taking me to a tank cell on concrete, kidnapping me from Calgary and taking me to Edmonton for no reason whatsoever. I have 4 testimonies of 4 inmates that were approached by guards, the guards that told them beat him up, do him, murder him, and we give you incentives. So I want to go after the villains. I want to go after the premier. And also I want to form a new party here in Alberta, a party that will actually do what the parties are supposed to be doing, which is to represent those that have elected them. Believe it or not, we have come in our beloved Alberta to a point of 1776. We have taxation without representation. We are giving so much, over 50% of our taxes are going to those devils, and we receive very little from them. They are infringing on our rights. They're arresting us. They are blowing money left and right for their parties. It looks like they're accountable to no one. So what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to put as many people together as possible and create another conservative party, a grassroots party, like Republicans, that will actually tackle this huge giant. So you can help me with that. You can go to streetchurch.ca, streetchurch.ca. It's a website where you can donate. All of those funds are going to one account, to the church's account, where we allocate them. We feed thousands of people on the streets of Calgary, and I'm raising funds right now to hire a team of lawyers that will actually file lawsuits. For example, the officers with health inspectors that broke the section of the criminal code 176 and went to the church building illegally, arrested me illegally, and took me before the courts illegally as well. Those people need to be accountable. We have to start filing lawsuits against those people, and that takes a lots of money. As you know, nothing is moved without thousands of dollars these days. So you can chip into that. But I want to tell you what God said to me last year when I came and visited your beautiful nation, because I think Americans need to hear this over and over again, because when God speaks, it's like a double-edged sword. It's powerful and it's piercing. And I want you to know, I want you to remember this, because when I came to United States, I asked him, I said, God, what is the message for my American brothers and sisters? What you want me to tell them? And his answer was a little bit surprising for me. Listen to what he said. He said, tell the American people, tell this great eagle that it's time for that eagle to rise up once again and start flapping its wings. You know, it hit me between my eyes. In other words, God is calling you, Americans, the great eagle. He recognizes there is an anointing on your nation, an anointing to help others, not just for yourself. You have not been created just for yourself. You have become a symbol of liberty. You have become a nation that is shining on all the other nations, and he calls you great eagle. Also, he says it's time for that great eagle to rise up again. That means you have kind of settled down, and you have neglected your responsibility to be the nation that stands for liberty, for freedom of not just yourself but other nations. And also he says, start flapping your wings. You know what that means? That means action. You got to do something. You cannot just watch another program and say, yeah, I know it's bad. No, there's a time that God says it's time for action. You got to start to believe that God has called you a great eagle. It's time for you to start doing what you have been called to do, and it's time to start flapping your wings and move into that realm and start chasing those hyenas away. So that was very encouraging, because I looked around and I thought, God, who can save us? I mean, I understand that you are on our side, and I understand that you are a strong tower, but God always uses people. Remember that, folks. God always uses people, and he wants to use you.
You know, Pastor, it's amazing what you just said, because our campaign for America, I mean, we came out of nowhere. And for the life of me, I asked my wife today, I said, how is it that God directed us for all the work we're doing in America to Canada? How did this happen? And if you look at the symbol of Campaign for America, it's at the head of an eagle. But what's more telling, what you just said, and a chill ran up and down my spine, on our website and just about everywhere we go are the words, now is our time. What do you think of that? Now is our time. So maybe we're a little eagle right now, okay? And we're going to grow into a bigger eagle. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to keep that in prayer, because what you just said to me is kind of confirming another message that I got some time ago.
But remember, David was a little eagle in the eyes of others, but he was a big eagle in the eyes of God. So in the end of the day, it doesn't matter what people think of us, or what people say, or how we see ourselves. We have to remember David's success story was that he knew who his God was. That was the number one foundation. He knew how big his God was. When he saw the uncircumcised Fauci and Biden and Obama and Clinton, all those evil, wicked witches, he understood that, who do you think you are, Fauci, you Pinocchio, that you should defy the armies of the living God? This day your head is going to be chopped off. He understood how big his God was. He knew who his God was, but he also understood who he was in God. And he said that God delivered me from the lions and from the birds. The same way he delivered me before, he's going to deliver me again. And America, remember that God delivered you before many times. And he made you successful because you stood on the foundation of the living God, on the word of God. And I believe that God wants to use that again. I believe that you have been called for such a time as this, like David. You just have to remind yourself who your God is, and you have to remind yourself who you are in the eyes of God, how powerful you are.
Well said. Pastor, would you do me a favor and send me via email your website? Because we'll put the link on our newsletter. Thousands of people get that. And we're going to ask people all over the world to send donations to you. And I pray to God that, and look, this is God ordained as far as I'm concerned, to help you in this way. Also, the Solidarity website, solidaritycanada.com.
It's Solidarity Movement of Canada.
Okay, good. Send that to me, and we will send out a special newsletter next week. We'll send it out with your information on it, and based on what the people have heard tonight, and God, I believe nothing's by accident. This is a divine meeting we've had. You've kind of prophesied to me here, and it's just it's an amazing story, isn't it? And it's a good journey. I try to tell people, look, it's a good journey because at the end of the journey, we win and they lose.
Right.
Any last words before we say goodnight to you, Pastor?
I just want to say to you, do not lose hope, because the enemy is overwhelming. And I hear this over and over again. What can we do? We're such a small people. They have the power. They got the money. They got the media. Listen, but we have God. When you have God, you've got everything you need, and God will supply everything else we need. You see, God has given David what he needed, which was a slingshot, a staff, and 5 smooth stones for every brother that Goliath had. God will cover us. Of course, he uses people, so we need each other, but I don't want you to live a life of despair, a life of depression. Listen, we will win. In the end, we win. Truth always wins. Truth is like a pillar that stands on its own. It's a lie that needs support. Manipulation, misinformation, more lies, more terror, more fear. Do not allow the enemy to scare you. The Israelites were looking at Philistines and they all were scared until a nobody in their eyes showed up. Let you and me, let us be the nobodies of today in the hands of the powerful somebody, the living God. And I'm telling you, we cannot lose. Look, they've tried to murder me. They hired assassins. They wanted to kill me in prison. I faced dozen criminal charges of terrorism and all other things. And you don't see me depressed. You don't see me crying out and saying, oh, poor me, I'm going to die. No, my life belongs to the living God. It's in the palm of his hands. And what's even more amazing is that the life of my enemies also belong to my Father which is in heaven. They woke up in the morning all because my daddy allowed them to wake up in the morning for his glory, like he did during the time of the pharaohs and the Egyptians. So be of good courage. God said to Joshua and Caleb, he said to them, be strong and courageous. Be very strong and courageous. I've told you to be strong and courageous. And I want to bless you with that. Americans and Canadians, I love you. Be strong and courageous because we know we win in the end.
Pastor, we love you. You're a wonderful ambassador for Christ. And let me say this to you. The eagle is on the way. Thank you, Pastor. God bless you. And I salute you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. God bless you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you ever thought there was a shortage of heroes in this world, well, you just saw one. I don't know what to say. I don't know what I can add to what this gentleman and this ambassador for Christ has said. But you know, when he talks about eagles, remember, you're all eagles now. So we're going to get his information, folks. I know finances are tough, but you know, some of us, we have to make sacrifices. Remember the widow's mite. So when we post it and send to you his information, send this gentleman, this pastor, this hero what you can. I believe me, I know it costs a lot, but I know if we heed the call of God, as he says, we will be able to overcome. Now, those of you who are new and who do not receive our newsletter, please, you see campaign, the number 4america.com, right? Right there below my name, campaignforamerica.com. That's our website. Go to the contact information page. Don't email me directly because it'll be piled up in a lot of emails. But this website we have, you will be able to provide us with your name and your email. We'll make sure you get the newsletters that we send out, particularly the special one we're sending out with the pastor's information. So, again, send it to me, email, and Pastor, once again, email me. I know you just posted this, but it's in a private chat. We can't capture it. But I'll get the pastor's information and we'll get it to all of you. So that's it, folks. What can I say? What an encouraging man, right? So, well, like he said, look at, you know, I know we all end up in the valley, me too, don't we? But there's a mountain to climb, and God said he'd not only deliver us and walk with us through the valley, he would bring us up to the mountaintop. So I have nothing else to add other than it's been a blessing to have this hero on. It's a blessing to partnership with the Canadian people. We're all in this boat together, aren't we? Well, we're all going to mount that eagle together, and we're going to fly it as tall and as high as we could. And we're going to make sure that God will shed his grace on all of us. And you know what that eagle's going to do when he flies over America and Canada? He's going to chirp. He's going to chirp, and the chirp is going to say, "Let freedom ring." God bless you all. See you next week. Thank you all. Have a great and wonderful week. I'm Lieutenant